Most men treat their fingers like a warm-up act, something you do for a few minutes before the real thing starts. A courtesy. A box to check on the way to where you actually want to be, and they wonder why she's not responding the way they hoped, why the encounter never quite reaches the level they thought it would, why she seems to be there but not fully there. The men who understand what fingers can actually do, the men women describe as genuinely extraordinary, treat them as the main event. Because fingers bend, they adjust pressure, they change angles. They can target tissue with a precision that nothing straight and rigid can match. Used correctly, they are the most powerful tool a man has, and most men have no idea how to use them. I'm Valerie, sex therapist, and today I'm giving you 5 specific moves that will change what happens when you use your hands. From inside her experience, what each one actually feels like, what it's doing to her tissue, and why the approach matters more than the technique. Stay with me. Because by the end of this, your hands are going to work completely differently. Okay? Before the 5 moves, there are 2 things that have to happen first, and I want to be direct about why they matter physiologically, and not just as courtesy. The first is preparation. Trim your nails smooth, not just short smooth, because a jagged edge on tissue that is going to become increasingly sensitive is the fastest way to pull her out of the experience entirely. Wash your hands thoroughly, remove any rings, and keep lubricant nearby, unscented, water-based, even when she's wet. Additional lubrication reduces friction in a way that allows sensation to travel more cleanly through the tissue. Think of it as the difference between touching silk and touching cotton. Both work. One transmits sensation differently. The second is time, and by time I mean the time before your hands get anywhere near her genitals, because the tissue you're going to be working with, the clitoral body, the vaginal walls, the perurethral glands behind the front wall, none of it is ready to receive meaningful stimulation until arousal has been building long enough to drive real engorgement. 20 minutes of genuine whole body attention minimum. Her neck, her collarbone, the inside of your arms, her lower back, her hips, all of it awakened and warm before you move anywhere specific. You see, the reason so many men find that their technique doesn't produce what they expected is not the technique itself. It's that they arrived at the technique before her body was ready for it. Stimulation applied to unengorged tissue registers as pressure, not pleasure. And all the skill in the world cannot compensate for working with tissue that hasn't been given time to come fully online. So, prepare your hands, prepare her body, and then begin. Alright? The first move. And this one starts before you ever touch skin. The slow external build. She still has her underwear on, and that's intentional. You press your palm gently over her vulva, warmth and pressure through the fabric, and you hold it there, and then you release, and you do this slowly, deliberately, with long pauses between contact, on and off. Press and release, and in between. When your fingers trace the edges of the fabric, the crease where her inner thigh meets her body, the line of the waistband, everything around the area, never directly on it. Now here is what is happening in her body while you do this. The warmth of your palm pressing through fabric sends a signal to the tissue underneath. Blood begins moving toward the area. The labia, which were at rest, begin to swell slightly. The clitoral body, which extends much deeper internally than most people realize, begins to fill. and the anticipation of not knowing exactly when direct contact will come, the on-off pattern, the almost arriving and then pulling back, creates a specific kind of tension that her body responds to the same way it responds to the buildup in the best moments of any arousal. She is not being teased in a playful sense, and she is being physiologically prepared. The tissue that needs to engorge is receiving the signal to do so before you ever make direct contact, and when you finally remove that fabric, you are working with tissue that had already been priming for several minutes rather than tissue that is encountering attention for the first time. All right, take longer here than feels necessary. The impulse will be to move forward. Resist it. Every additional minute of this preparation adds to the ceiling of what she's capable of feeling later. And she can feel the difference. She knows when a man has taken the time and when he hasn't, and her body responds accordingly. When she moves towards you, when her hips press slightly into your hand or she reaches for you, that's the signal. Now you move to skin. Now, the second move. And this is the one most men rush past because they think they're being too indirect. Circling the hood without exposing the tip. You slide a fingertip along the outer lips first, slowly, then the inner lips. Then you circle the clitoral hood, the fold of skin that covers the clitoral glands, without pulling it back, without going directly onto the exposed tip. And here is why this matters enormously. The clitoral gland, the visible external tip, contains more nerve endings per square inch than almost anywhere else on the human body. When it hasn't been warmed up sufficiently, direct contact on the exposed tip doesn't produce intense pleasure. It produces intense sensitivity, and that sensitivity overwhelms the nerve endings, which respond by reducing their signal. The very thing you're trying to build goes numb, you see. The hood exists for a reason. It protects the glands from constant stimulation, and working the hood from the outside, through it rather than on the tip itself, delivers sensation to the clitoris in a filtered, building way that allows the pleasure to accumulate rather than spike and flatten. So your fingertip moves in slow circles just around the hood, not on the exposed tip, around it. The sensation travels through the thin layer of tissue and arrives at the clitoral body below in a diffuse, spreading way. Warmth rather than intensity, building rather than hitting. And as her arousal deepens, not weaken as the tissue engorges further, and she becomes genuinely hungry for more direct contact, the hood itself becomes increasingly sensitive to touch. The circling that felt gentle a few minutes ago starts to feel like exactly what she needs. Her hips will tell you. The way she tilts toward your hand, the change in her breathing, the slight change in the sound she makes, all of it is information about when to stay exactly where you are and when her body is ready for something more direct. Stay in the circling longer than feels like enough. Then a little longer than that, and read what she gives you before you change anything. Now the third move, the come hither on the front wall, when she is genuinely fully aroused, when you can feel that the tissue is warm and responsive and her body is well into its build, you enter with one finger, slowly, all the way in, and then you pause. You let her body settle around the feeling of being entered. You give the pelvic floor muscles a moment to relax rather than tightening against sudden penetration. And then you curl your fingertip upward toward the front wall, the wall facing up when she's on her back, about 1 to 2 inches in, and you find a texture there that's slightly different from the smooth walls surrounding it. Slightly ridged, slightly spongy. That is the tissue sitting over the paraurethral glands, adjacent to the internal arms of the clitoris, the area most people call the G-spot. Now here is the specific thing about this tissue that changes how you need to approach it. It has to be activated before it can be meaningfully stimulated. When arousal is incomplete, this tissue is flat and relatively unresponsive. Pressing on it registers as pressure without the deep sensation that properly aroused tissue produces. But when a woman is fully engorged, this tissue swells and becomes textured, sensitive, and capable of producing a sensation that spreads through the farseers, the front wall, and deep into the belly in a way that is completely different from clitoral stimulation. So your come hither motion, the slow curl of your fingertip dragging across that front wall tissue, is not just a technique. It is a conversation with tissue that needs to be drawn out rather than demanded. Start with the lightest possible pressure, a slow drag of your fing pad across the length of that tissue from one end to the other. You are mapping it, learning where it is most responsive, feeling whether it is flat and needs more time or whether it is already swelling and asking for more. All right, and then you hold. Rather than continuous back and forth motion, you anchor your fingertip on the most responsive area and you apply a steady rhythmic pulse of pressure. On. So release. On, release. Slow and consistent. The consistency is what her body needs to lock onto and ride, and you ask her, softer or more pressure? And when she tells you, you hold exactly that. Same pressure, same rhythm, unbroken. Because here's the truth about this tissue that most men never stay in one place long enough to discover. The sensation it produces doesn't come from how much you do. It comes from how reliably you do it. Consistent, rhythmic pressure on engorged front wall tissue, sustained without changing, is what produces the deep radiating sensation that many women describe as the most intense internal experience they've ever felt. And the moment you change the pressure, the angle, the rhythm, the sensation resets, and she has to build again from lower down. Hold it, trust it, and follow what her body tells you. So now I want to pause here, because the next two moves go into territory I can't fully detail on this platform. The specific mechanics of blended stimulation, how to coordinate your hands, what to do when she's close and her body is signaling it clearly. That level of explicit instruction is not something YouTube lets me finish. So it lives in Valerie Uncensored, my private newsletter. Everything I cannot say here, I say in there. Specific, unfiltered, the real conversation. The link is in the description. That is where you go for the rest of it. All right, back to it. The fourth move, and this is the one that changes everything she's felt up to this point. Blended stimulation, fingers inside and thumb on the clitoris simultaneously. By this point, if you've worked through the first three moves correctly, her tissue is fully engorged. All the front wall is responsive. The clitoral body is filled and sensitive. And now you engage both systems at the same time. Your finger or fingers maintain their position on the front wall. The rhythmic pressure you've been building, the anchor that her body has learned to respond to. And now your thumb comes to rest on the clitoral hood, not directly on the exposed tip yet, on the hood with the same circling motion you established in the second move. And both are moving together. Fingers on the front wall, thumb on the hood, same rhythm, both at once. Now here's what that feels like from inside her body when it's done right. The internal stimulation of the front wall and the external stimulation of the clitoris are not separate systems producing separate sensations. They are connected. It's the internal clitoral structure, the arms and body that extend deep inside her, wraps directly around the tissue your fingers are working. The external clitoral tip connects to that same internal body. So when you stimulate both simultaneously, you are stimulating two ends of the same structure at the same time. The sensations merge. The internal pressure amplifies the external sensation. The external stimulation deepens the internal response. What was building in two places at once now feeds itself, each one making the other stronger. And the orgasm that builds from this combined stimulation is qualitatively different from anything produced by either one alone. It doesn't concentrate at a single point. It expands. It spreads through her lower body simultaneously from inside and outside. It builds into a level that single system stimulation simply cannot reach. All right, the key to making this work is the coordination. Both hands need to be moving in the same rhythm. If they're out of sync, if your fingers are moving at one pace and your thumb at another, her nervous system receives two competing signals and cannot lock onto either. So you find one rhythm that works for both and you hold it. Consistent, patient, building, and you watch her body. When her hips start rising toward you, when she's pressing into both points of contact rather than being passive, you are in exactly the right place doing exactly the right things. Hold that rhythm, let it build, and give her what she's been building toward. And the fifth move, the one that determines whether everything you just built actually arrives where it's going, on holding the rhythm when she's close. Here is the specific moment that most men destroy without knowing it. She's been building. Her breathing has changed. Her hips are moving with intention toward her hands. The sounds she makes have become less controlled. And he can feel that something is happening. He can feel her body reaching toward something. And his instinct is to respond to it, to give her more, to escalate. So he goes faster, or he adds more pressure, or he shifts his angle slightly because he thinks he's found a better spot, or he moves from his fingers to his mouth because he wants to add more sensation, and her orgasm, which was right there, which her body was seconds from, retreats. The tension that had been building collapses, and her body has to start the whole climb again from lower down. You see? Well, this happens because he reads her response as a request for more when her body is actually saying something else entirely. When she starts responding with intensity, when her body is clearly building toward climax, she is not asking for something different. She's asking for the same thing, reliably, consistently, without interruption. Whatever you were doing when she started responding like that is exactly what her nervous system has locked onto as the path to her orgasm. Any change in pressure, rhythm, angle, or technique tells her nervous system that path has shifted and the building stops. So when she starts responding, when every signal her body is giving you says she's right there, you go completely still in your approach. You hold the pressure, you hold the rhythm, you hold the exact position of your fingers and your thumb. Or you do not speed up, you do not slow down, you do not change a single thing, and you let her body complete the process it has been building toward. Now the hardest part of this is sitting with your own impulse to do more. Everything in you wants to escalate when she escalates. It feels passive to hold still while her body is clearly responding. But that stillness, that absolute consistency and reliability in the moment she needs it most, is what gets her there. She needs to know that what she found is still there, that it isn't going anywhere, that she can trust it completely and give herself to it. Hold it and hold it and hold it and let her arrive. These 5 moves are one sequence. Each one makes the next one possible. The slow external build drives the engorgement that the come hither requires. The hood circling warms the clitoris for the blended stimulation that comes later. The front wall work activates the tissue that amplifies everything when both systems run together. And holding the rhythm at the end honors everything that came before by giving her body what it needs to complete what it's been building. But underneath all 5 moves is one thing that none of them work without: attention. Genuine, sustained, unhurried attention to what her body is telling you in real time. Her breathing, her movement, the change in her sounds, the way she presses towards you or pulls away. All of it is information. All of it is her body speaking directly to you and the men who hear it, who are present enough to read it and responsive enough to follow, are the men whose hands she cannot forget. Yeah, most men are thinking about technique while her body is trying to tell them exactly what it needs. The technique matters, but the attention is what makes the technique work. Your hands, used with patience and real presence, are capable of things her body has been waiting for. And if you want the explicit, unfiltered version of how to do everything I've taught today, the exact mechanics, the specific moments, how to read her body as it builds and respond to what you find, join Valerie Uncensored. Link is in the description. That is where I finish this conversation completely. I'll see you there.